manager and host of The Choice, Rachel Barkley. Rachel, what's happening at the club these days?
The club these days, well, we are gearing up to reopen these very clean and sanitized doors here, quite literally. We bought Philadelphia out of all of their Purell and neighboring cities. But, you know, we did some really cool stuff last week. We actually donated 80 to 100 chef-inspired meals. So Chef Silva and myself, as well as the rest of the team who's here, went over to South Philadelphia 1st Precinct and fed some cops and detectives and lieutenants. And that was just a really wonderful experience. You know, I mean, they are just incredibly busy over there, and we're looking into doing that again next week with our friends at Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania.
Oh, nice.
So,
nice.
Yeah, so very, very, very excited for that. And then just refocusing on getting open. I think Pennsylvania is looking like the 5th of June. Here's hoping for a safe and healthy return sooner than later, I'm sure.
What are you most excited about the reopening?
To see people in person. You know, it's been nice to get to know everybody, you know, virtually. I actually have deepened a lot of my relationships with members, so that's been wonderful. But you know, I'm looking forward to going into our new normal. You know, to have people here at the club, and you know, this has been great and all. And I look forward to integrating the two, but I'm very excited to have the staff back here full time. And so I'm sure everybody can share those sentiments.
And I trust that everything went well on Mother's Day with the dinners and the pickups.
Yes, it did. We had one gentleman who forgot, and I met him here on Sunday, but he was very, very thankful that I pulled it through for him. But yeah, people are very excited about that. So looking forward to also incorporating more heat and serve, sort of large shareable meals in the future. It wasn't something that we did before. So, you know, a lot of good additions will have come from this hiatus of ours, huh?
Awesome. Awesome. Magic always comes out of chaos. So
it
thank
does.
you again for hosting.
Yep. Thank you for having.
Speaking of hosting, my co-host, the president, founder, CEO, webmaster, instructional designer extraordinaire, all the way from Madison, Wisconsin, president of Learning in the White Space, Dawnie Mahoney. What's up?
Good day to you both, and it's Tuesday. If it's Tuesday, I must be chatting with Dr. Jim and Rachel. So thank you so much for that introduction. I'm here today, although I'll mostly be in the background, I think, based on how we're set up to roll. I'm going to invite everybody in the setup here, all of our guests, to please mute and turn your cameras off, but also choose to chat with me, chat with us, ask your questions. I'll bubble them up to Jim as soon as there's a break in the action, and that works. If you want to see all of us, click where you see the word speaker view, and it'll turn you on in gallery view. Likewise, if you just want to see a big window with the person speaking, then you'll click gallery view, and it'll turn you to speaker view. If you're on an iPad or a tablet or your phone, you'll have to touch your screen to have those controls up here. And with that, take it away, Dr. Jim.
Thank you, Dawnie. Thank you. I'm always looking for ways to reinvent myself. I think you know that. And I always look for ways to do things differently. We're going to do that on today's episode. Typically when I have my guests, they're the ones that are in the hot seat. I get to ask the questions. This time, the guest that I'm having on, we're putting ourselves in the hot seat. We're going to have a conversation. We're essentially going to interview each other. Let me introduce Sherri right now. And as always, glasses come off, and I want to make sure I read this thoroughly. Dr. Sherri Malouf, PhD, Chair and Principal of Situation Management Systems. SMS owns our industry's crown jewel of influence programs, positive power, and influence. And I'm proud to say that back in the 90s, when I was working for the Vanguard Group in Core States Bank, I had the opportunity to experience the program live. For over 30 years, Sherri has been a leader and coach in the personal development space. The last 20 years, she has overseen SMS and its SMS and its programs touch over 100,000 people in public and private sectors across the globe and within many Fortune 500 companies. Most recently, Sherri has completed her PhD research on the leader-follower relationship and the creation of implicit social elements. I am ecstatic to be able to spend the next 60 minutes with my friend, the Dr. Sherri Malouf. Good afternoon, Sherri.
Here comes.
Hi. Hello.
How are you? Happy Tuesday.
I know it's a great Tuesday, and I am delighted to be here with you, Jim. We share a lot in common. We like to help people step into their bigger self, which is a choice that we're all faced with every day. And so it seems like a lot of the people here, we all have this sort of common desire to step into our bigger selves. And, SMS with the Positive Parent Influence program, we really stepped out with that program. That was very unique and a powerful experience. The impact it's had on people worldwide is phenomenal.
The impact it had on me during the 90s, it was brand new. And after I went through it, I felt a lot more powerful, more of an influencer, knew when to push, knew when to pull, knew when to disengage. And I still remember a lot of the tips and tools that I learned back in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it stays with a lot of people. It's a very powerful personal experience. And part of it is there's a simplicity, yet an elegance to it. I mean, it's like you can remember the model, the push and the pull, but it handles very complex situations and very simple, straightforward situations. So it's very flexible from that standpoint. And I, with my research and the implicit social elements, what we're looking to do is, again, step out into this whole field and say, hey, here's another way to look at things. Here's a completely different viewpoint. And writing my book, as you know, you've got a book going, so do I. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited to share about what I've done, but I also really want to hear from you. I want to be the person that gets to say, okay, Dr. Jim, tell us about you.
Put me in the hot seat, right?
Yeah, so we'll be hot seating together.
Well, with that said, I want to start with you.
Okay.
Tell me about this topic, this research topic that's called leader-follower relationship. What's that about, and why did it attract you? Why did it attract you? So take us back.
It's interesting that I decided that I would get my PhD probably 25 years after I'd done my master's degree. And I wanted some intellectual stimulation. I love exercising my brain. I love doing research. My master's was completely by research. There was some research involved in my bachelor's, so research was what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do something to help the company, to think about how do we get ourselves into a different level. And as with a lot of people, well, I actually went in with a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do, but then it changed as I started reading, as I started looking at things, and really through all the tons of articles and books, well, you know what it's like.
Absolutely.
Everything that I read, it seemed like this was something that people really didn't look at, the relationship itself. And it was also important because, you know, we've always talked about relationship in the PPI program. And I wanted to find a way to measure something that was very difficult to measure and very complex, because it's something that happens between us, right? A relationship gets developed between us. It doesn't sit with you, it doesn't sit with me, it sits with both of us. And so it was kind of funny to go in and say, well, how do I look at this? How do I play with this thing called a relationship, especially within the context of organizations and leaders and followers? So that's kind of what drove me.
Can you speak to how that might impact one's choices, considering that back and forth relationship?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm very solid about is the fact that every relationship is 50-50. And I don't care if it's a leader versus a follower versus a leader. You have 50% of the responsibility for developing that relationship in the way you would like to see it developed. Because, you know, we're kind of a nation of victims.
You're going to get me started. You're going to get me started.
Well, let's get you started. So what about you? Why did you get drawn to authenticity? What was it about that got you to focus on that for your?
Sure. Like you, initially, I was going to research something else. I was going to research fear in the workplace, because through my workshops and my client interactions and my coaching, I felt that people were afraid to be their true selves in the workplace. There was always this degree of turning the volume down because he or she didn't feel that it would be appreciated. Their true self, their true meaning, their power would somehow not fit into the corporate culture. And after beginning that research on fear, not really, I guess, wrapping my arms around it, I segued into authenticity. And one of the reasons why I segued there is, again, during my sessions, people would tend to say, I'm one way at home and I'm one way at work. So one place, whether it's home or work, you're trick-or-treating. You're not keeping it real. You're being that person you believe you need to be in order to be successful, keep the peace, whatever. And then, Sherri, during my sessions, I would ask the question on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst score and 10 being the top score, how authentic would you say you are at work? And how authentic would you say you're at home? And if the number is not the same, why? And if there's a gap, say you're 7 and not a 10, or a 6 and not a 10, what do you think needs to happen in order for you to bridge that gap? And if you are a 10, what do you have to do to continue to live in your authentic space? And that just intrigued me. It challenged me. And I said, I'm going to do some research on this. And as it goes back to the fear aspect, when I went in, I thought people were afraid to be authentic. And my belief at that point was that authenticity was an either or. You're either authentic or you're inauthentic. Well, Sherri, when I finished my research, I hypothesized that authenticity is a matter of more or less, not either or. And it plays a role in both the personal and professional choices we make in life. That's what it was in the beginning. That's what drove me, and that's what kept me there and keeps me there today.
Yeah, I really like that idea of degrees of authenticity. So how do you define authenticity? Because there's so many different ways that people talk about authenticity.
You have your old school thinking,
Mm-hmm.
back to Socrates and Aristotle, to thine own self be true. And the more common version of that, which is being your true self, living your true self, and having your behaviors align with your beliefs to the best that you can. Other thoughts about authenticity was that authenticity is like a kaleidoscope where you're consistently not changing, but choosing how you're going to show up in that situation, given the situation. And there are people who dispute the fact that we can be authentic because they will say an object is authentic, a rug, a piece of jewelry. That's authentic because it's not changing. People cannot be authentic because we're consistently evolving. We're changing, we're evolving given the situation. So you have your pros and your cons, which kind of confused me during the research and made me dig deeper to find out what this is really about. And what was unsettling, Sherri, similar to you, there wasn't a lot of research out there on authenticity at work. It was more or less general authenticity, living authentic. And I had to narrow my focus to authenticity at work. And the research was compelling. And I'll share more stories as we continue to talk.
So I'm popping in with a question, and it can be for both of you. But Shemaine asks, is it really 50-50, or does the 50-50 morph at different times, meaning maybe it's 60-40 or 40-60? And does the responsibility become uneven? So in addition to the morphing, whose responsibility factor is it? So I bet you both have things to say about that.
Sherri, mic check, mic check.
So it's actually, because we're talking about the quality of the relationship. So the quality means that if my leader is doing something that I find, let's just call it unproductive. Do I have the guts to go say to my leader, this is unproductive for me? And if I don't, then I'm letting down on my side. So while each side has different roles that they play, so don't confuse responsibility for the quality of the relationship with the roles that people play. So for example, the leader sets a tone, right? But if the follower doesn't like that tone, do they just take it and walk away and go, oh, well? Because then I'm not doing my half of that relationship to say, listen, this is what worked and this is what didn't work for me. And believe me, there's organizations where you can have that conversation and there's organizations where you cannot. So I fully appreciate that the company culture gets into it, but what kind of a relationship do you want to build with your leadership? What do you want for yourself? If you want something different, you either take responsibility and make that change right then and there, or go find another job. Yeah. That's my answer.
And I concur, Sherri. When during my professional career, I was not powerful, was when I wasn't bringing my 50%. I am accountable for my future as well. I talk about I'm starring in my own movie. I'm directing my movie. I'm the leading person in my movie. And I have to make the choice to direct where I'm going, even if I don't have help. I believe when I look in the mirror in the morning, yeah, I do see me, but I also see my choices. And my choices could be not speaking up. I look like someone who's in victim mode right now. I look like someone who's not making the right appropriate choices, not having that crucial conversation. I'm not bringing my 50 cent, 50%, 50 cent too, that's the record, 50%. Course is going to fluctuate depending on the leadership style you're dealing with. I believe that I have to bring my 50%. I'm accountable and responsible for my goals and actions and results. Tony, another question?
Yes, we have a few comments out there. M. Butler, first of all, says all in is 100% responsibility for the message and the result. But the question from Rob is this: if authenticity is changing, are the degrees more about how much you tear down the fences that protect you instead of how authentic you are? In other words, how much you show of yourself at this moment instead of how authentic you are?
Great question. I believe, Rob, it's a combination. It's an and, either and. It's a combination because yes, we're consistently, I believe, breaking down life's scar tissue that prevents us from being our authentic true self. I also believe in organizations, there's a threshold for the amount of authenticity you can exude. Because you can be an authentic jerk, an authentic loser, an authentic narcissist, whatever that thing is that could go against the corporate norms, the values, the vision, and so forth. And it could be condition of employment. Well, I believe that the degree of authenticity goes from everywhere from fake it till you make it, go along to get along, just trying to make it through, to you being your full expressive self as long as it doesn't go against the corporate norms. And to that point, Rob, I believe the more I'm working on being more of me and not foreshadowing failure and getting rid of the story that's in my head about what's going to happen as a result if I do that, I think we begin to set a pattern and build a new paradigm around expression. And going back to what Sherri said, some organizations still don't want to hear, they ask for that as long as it's in line with their beliefs. And through my research and my interviews and talking to people, that seemed to be the common theme, that leadership wants your level of authenticity as long as it's in alignment with their thoughts and beliefs.
That would be my question for both of you as well, is there's the nature versus nurture situation, as well as having gotten burned on being authentic or being that full 50% in the past can cause some of us to retreat when we should actually step forward. So love it if each of you would address that for the people in the audience.
Can I go first, Sherri?
Sure.
Right. I believe our retreat mindset is very situational because there are some things in life that don't go well and we get back up and go back in again. We're very situational when it comes to dusting ourselves off and getting back into the game. And I believe it speaks to how much we want something, how much we value something, and how much it means to us. I have fallen down and gotten back up, and there are situations where I've fallen down and have chosen to go in a different direction. Well, I believe it's what that obstacle is, and I find that in corporate, once you burn that bridge or share your truth and someone doesn't appreciate it, someone that has power, it can be career limiting or career altering. And as Sherri said, if that's the case, that's not the only job in the world. That's not the only opportunity in the world. It's up to you to continue to explore and transform. Sherri?
Well, to me, if I'm in an organization and I'm constantly getting slapped for who I am, then I'm not in the right place. They don't appreciate who I am because, again, yes, we can make silly mistakes, but if I'm just genuinely doing my job, being me, doing what I got to do every day, and I'm not able to make those connections, those relationships are a critical part of why we stay in organizations, why we want to work with people. Those relationships are at the basis of every decision that gets made in an organization. So if I'm not developing those strong relationships, if I'm creating problems everywhere I go, then it's not a good fit. I might have thought it was a good fit, but it's not. It's not the place where I can really be me. So when I know that I'm not being me, I get a feeling, my system reacts, my body reacts. Like my gut feels funny. I feel more stressed. There's more anxiety when I go into meetings or have interactions with people. And I don't really want to live that way. And I know it's kind of, especially these days, it's so hard because we just really don't know what's happening with our futures in our lives right now. This whole scenario that we're living in, this chaos, is kind of crazy. But if it really is hitting me that hard and I'm that stressed every time I go to work, then I need to be somewhere else, because we end up kind of being like a fish. We're in the water and we don't know we're in the water. So we're in this stressed place. And there's times in my life when I've gone, Sherri, you are really stressed out right now. And I was so stressed out that I didn't even realize how stressed I was. So I think it's important to get your system together and understand that you have a partnership with your body. And your body will give you so many powerful messages about what to eat, where to go, what to do, but we don't understand our bodies and we don't listen to our bodies. So there's a whole system and intelligence here that can tell us you're going the wrong way. When we get negative emotional reactions in a situation, that's time for us to look inside instead of blame out here. It's time to go, hey, what am I doing? What can I do differently in this moment so that I get a different outcome? So that's kind of a long answer, but that's kind of what came to mind.
It's on point. It's on point. I call it working overtime. The work you put in before you get to work, thinking about how am I going to show up today. Then the work you put in thinking about how you showed up as you drove home, and then doing it all over. How am I going to do it again? How am I going to do it again? How am I going to do it again? We're trying to be right. We're trying to be this, trying to be that, rather than just trying to be, just being ourselves. If I'm not going to work out in an organization, I don't want it to be because I fake it until I make it. If it's not going to work for me, I want it not to work because I gave my best and I am who I am and it just didn't work out. Not because I was attempting to be who they wanted me to be. The best job of me I can do is me being me, not attempting to be who someone wants me to be.
And the problem is when we're trying to be somebody else, we lose so much power. We lose the power of who we are. We aren't balanced between our head, our heart, our gut, our pelvis. We're not grounded. We're not centered. We are just scattered. And we tend to blow and try to match what people think we should be, instead of really just stepping into our power. And we really need to do that right now. We need more people to step out and say, hey, this is how I want to be. I don't want to live in this anger. I don't want to live in this frustration. I don't want to live in this world where people are just so angry at each other. Let's step into a different place. Let's look at it. I tweeted something the other day that was, wisdom doesn't take sides. And it's true.
Good. That's good. Any more questions, Dawnnie?
Yes. Ron asks, how does one sort out those thoughts and beliefs, in quotes, of leadership? So I think it's a really good follow-on to what you're covering right now.
How does the leader or how does the individual?
How does one sort through? So I think you can look at it from each direction.
Sure.
Let me take this one first, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
So my research in terms of what I created is called the implicit social elements. And the implicit social elements are stuff like fairness, trust, empathy, status. There's 7 of them. And what they are is they are a part of our unconscious processing about relationships that we have. And so there was a bunch of research that was done into how leaders think about followers and what their expectations are of followers, and vice versa. And what happens is it's all unconscious. And so we do a quick examination of the people around us, and we very quickly and unconsciously decide that person meets my criteria of somebody who's either a leader or a follower. And so one of the things is that we have to bring ourselves to consciously look at, what am I doing? Why am I reacting to some person? So if there's somebody that you react very positively to, think about that. Why? And vice versa. How about negative reactions? Why are you reacting? Well, they don't treat me fairly, or I don't trust them. Or, so, there's all of this stuff that comes up. And basically what we are all really driven by is being connected with each other. And we are so disconnected. We have all kinds of reasons to create us's and them's in the world. And the more us's and them's in our life, the more difficult it is to keep track of all of them. But the other thing is we start to isolate more and more, and we get very fractured. We get fractured internally, and we get fractured externally.
It's ironic that you talk about our desire to be connected and to want that. Of late, for me, I've been seeing a desire to be right. Inside of the desire to be connected, but wanting to be right in that situation, where we find ourselves, what I call in my no excuse book, right fighting.
Yeah.
No one wins a right fight. We just create more distance versus closeness. And we lose sight of that approach or mindset of being connected. And I too agree with that. That connectivity thing is so key. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's actually hardwired into us. We need each other. It starts from a very young age. It's part of our survival. Physical pain and social pain are actually registered in the same part of the brain. Think about that for a minute. So if you feel social pain, you can take some aspirin and it might help. I mean, that's kind of a joke, but it's true. It relieves, it's in the same part of the brain. So we are so driven and constantly thinking about, how am I connected? How do we connect? What is this person? Why did they just, have a funny look on their face? What are they thinking? Why aren't I, connected? And it's a constant part of our unconscious processing about our interactions that we have.
And the fine line comes in with, how do I keep that in mind, stay true to myself, but not upset the apple cart in the workplace? I remember doing my research, I was talking to I would say, director level individual. He was talking about an off-site leadership meeting they had. And it was around the time of when Hurricane Katrina hit. And he said that he was the only African-American in the room. And by chance, someone came over to him and asked him if he thought the government's slow reaction to the folks in New Orleans was because New Orleans is a predominantly Black city. He was asked that question. And I said, what did you say? He said, what did you think I said? I wasn't giving them my truth. That could create so much polarization in that room that day, where the only thing they focused on was my reaction. I said, I could see why people might have felt that way. To me, that was an example of turning down the authenticity needle, less rather than more, where he felt if he was more authentic, he might have gone down a rabbit hole that he might not have been able to get out. And I believe people face situations like that on a daily basis where they are wondering, do they want my truth? I'm reminded of the movie A Few Good Men. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Do you want my truth? You asked for it. Now here it is. Now it costs me. So next time, I'm not going to give it to you. It's that delicate balance. We want to be connected, but we also want to create and maintain a positive culture in the workplace.
Yeah, it's this balance between managing differences, managing our differences, our us and them, being authentic, being aware, making a choice. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot because you actually have to get stuff done, you know?
Really? When? I'm going into this meeting and thinking about all these things I have to consider, him, her.
Right.
Any more questions?
Yes. Dr. Sherri, did you recognize any cultural influences related um, to a person's individualism or collectivism in the leader-follow relationship? I hope it was
Wow.
editorialized a little bit there, Marilyn.
You know, the implicit social elements are pretty cross-cultural. And there might be more emphasis in some cultures versus other cultures, because some cultures are very structured, you know, and hierarchical. So there might be status would be more important for that culture than other cultures.
Yeah.
I've got to do more research worldwide, but I know that all of the elements are important across all cultures, but they could have a different emphasis in different cultures. And I would say they most likely do. And then individually, obviously, everybody varies. Some people, fairness is the most critical thing. For others, it's respect. Having somebody who has empathy around you. You know, there's reciprocity is a big one, and that's very important in some cultures to be done in a very ritualized way. So again, it's all, unfortunately, I've always wished that if I could give somebody a pill to teach them how to influence better, then I'd be a very wealthy woman. But as with all of it, it depends on the situation. It depends on what you're bringing to the situation and what you want out of that situation.
The red pill or the blue pill, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of always back there, aren't we? There were a couple comments earlier. Stephen Jones is in the house. It's important to see a bigger future ahead. Let go of the past way of doing things and move forward with new education and personal growth opportunities. Don't stay stuck. And Jason says the desire to be right prevents progress. I believe conflict resolutions are enhanced when the need to be right isn't a priority. I know for myself, Marianne Williamson always says, do you choose to be right or do you choose to be happy? You know, it's that whole paradox, you know, with that. So what do you got for that? And Marilyn says, thank you so much. Very helpful.
Yeah, I concur. I'm co-signing that. Sherri, here's something that I found very compelling. Well, at least I found it compelling during my research. I asked the question at 1 to 10, with 1 being the least and 10 being the most. How authentic are you? I had more than enough. And some senior people say they scored themselves a 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Senior level people saying, I come to work, to get things done, to focus on the bottom line, not worrying about being true to myself or sharing my innermost thoughts or anything. I come to get things done. And some even said that they were more authentic during one-on-one interactions and less authentic when they were speaking amongst a group of people and they had to share a company line or a company belief or where we're going as an organization. And I'm like, what? Which led me to start hypothesizing that one doesn't have to be extremely authentic to have job satisfaction, to have organizational commitment, to feel good about his or her performance at work, where I started believing that our focus was more on performance and less on authenticity. Led me to believe that how productive are you being when, for the most part, all of you is not going into this job, this assignment, this meeting, this project. I found those situations to be pretty compelling.
Well, you know, what's interesting is that one of the things that we have to accept is that any relationship we are in, we are giving up a piece of ourselves. We're giving up control. We're giving up part of ourselves.
Say that again, please. Say that again.
We are. I mean, all good marriages, people are willing to give up part of their self to be in that relationship. So every relationship requires compromise. And as long as the person who's being inauthentic, whatever, however they define that in their mind, is still able to create powerful relationships with people, then I think, there's a role that you play in organizations and what's expected from you in that organization and that culture, and those people are at peace with the part of themselves that they have to give up to play that role. But one of the things I also know is that we went out and asked a bunch of people, what do you think would happen to your organization if you had stronger relationships between leaders and followers?
Ooh.
The answers were, we'd be more productive, we'd be happier, we'd get more done. It was unbelievable, the positive response around that, which is, it's not really unbelievable, it's pretty obvious on some level. But without exception, every single person I asked was basically, we'd be a completely different company. And we'd be more powerful.
And you would think if they're going to be more powerful, isn't that something you would sign up for? An organization saying, we want people to be who they are, true to themselves, be all in. Really? What would happen if that was the case? More productivity, more relationship, more communication? Well, if that's what you asked for, why isn't it happening?
Well, I think we've got a lot of companies that have cultures that have evolved and grown over many years. And there's lots of different types of cultures out there now. If you look at some of the, the tech firms, they have a very different culture from like an IBM or, a World Bank or anything like that. So there's very different cultures out there. And so the question is, when you look at this culture, how do you evolve it? How do you figure out how to evolve it? People do culture change stuff all the time. But my metric actually measures cultures in a completely different way. The implicit social elements will give you a grade for your relationship between leaders and followers in your organization. And that is something that I think a lot of people are a little bit afraid of.
Yeah. Tell me about some of the other challenges you faced recently during your positive power and influence programs around influence and relationship and communication between leader and follower.
Well, in most of the cases, so we have people come to the program and they look at, productive and non-productive relationships, and they bring a situation that they are challenged by. And
It's coming back.
There you go. So we work them really hard on the influence styles and how to do them. But then we take it and say, okay, let's apply this now. And when they apply it, in most cases, it's because the relationship is damaged, that they're having problems. And in most cases, I would say 75% of the time, the number one influence style that they need to use is one of the pull styles, either bridging or attracting.
Mm-hmm.
And, instead of pushing people about relationships, we have to draw them in and get connected. So it's really interesting that so many situations are really damaged by the lack of relationship.
Have you given thought to, because I have, how our programs or our beliefs around leader follower and authenticity is going to be impacted by distance, because we're not going to be in the meeting room together as often as we have in the past, or at least for the foreseeable future. Have you given that any thought of how distance is going to play a role?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity. And the opportunity, I know that's kind of cliche, but the opportunity is to open up and connect more deeply with people because we're dependent on trust.
Yeah.
And how do you trust people if you're not connected? You know, so it seems like it's a great opportunity for people to choose a different way of interacting with people they've struggled with before. And this medium, Zoom, it's great for having conversations and connecting with people, or whatever, you know, video conferencing you have, Teams, whatever. It's very powerful.
I believe it's powerful. And I'm sorry, you weren't finished. I jumped.
It's okay. We've been doing it to each other a little bit.
I believe it's powerful. It's going to enhance or perhaps take away from trust, because everything's being recorded.
Mm.
Authenticity is going to be called into question, because sometimes what happens in the room stays in the room. Well, the room is virtual now. Everyone might be privy to it. And especially, I'd say people in my industry, the speakers who used to go out and speak in front of large crowds and say whatever. Now, because of technology, we can be fact-checked in the moment. If we're not authentic, someone's 3 billion followers would know within 2 seconds. No longer are we allowed to get away with he said or she said or research suggests. People want to know what research, who said it, because the information is right in our hands. So for me, it increases the level of authenticity we have to bring, trust we have to bring, and how learned we have to be to build that connection and create that influence and that camaraderie.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting place to move into, because we are all being challenged to be more. And, you know, it's to let go of the right and the wrong, or the winning. You know, winning's another big one in our culture, you know, having to win. So, you know, all of that, you know, we're being challenged to face that stuff in ourselves and say, okay, I'm going to let this go. I'm going to let this go. And I think there's no time like the present to let go of some of the stuff that doesn't serve us. I have a little book called "You Are Not Your Inner Garbage." And so, you know, it's about that kind of stuff. It's letting it go.
Dawning, any questions out there?
We don't have so many questions. We've been having a sidebar chat echoing in as the two of you have been going along. And some of the pieces of information that have been bubbling up is that if you choose to be kind, then the rest of this probably doesn't even calculate in. That's one. Change is scary. And I think that's the scariest of all. And it kind of feeds into why the authenticity situation arises, the leader follower that you've both spent time with. Organizations do culture initiatives, and you can never change the culture as long as you're doing a culture initiative. It has to be grassroots oriented, and it has to be something that everybody agrees needs to happen. So we've been having that type of sidebar conversation a little bit out in the chat land.
What do you think the apprehension is in those cultural initiatives? Apprehension relative to seeing them through, their leadership apprehension. What do you think that's about?
You know, people hate change. Bottom line, you know, it's really funny. There's a very small percentage of people that go, I love change, bring it on. I love the torture. You know, there's very few people out there that really, really, really love change. Most people want predictability. Our brain wants predictability. And so
certainty. Yep.
Yeah. So our brain is interesting in the way that it works, because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that just happens very automatically with our brains. And so, and it's because our brain uses an immense amount of energy. So the more we have to think about just little conversations that we're having, did I just say the right thing? The more energy that goes into being conscious and making choices is draining. And that's why people don't like change. I want to go to work. I want to get my stuff done. Don't bother me with all this, softy, wussy, culture change stuff. Just let me get my job done.
I say to people that breathing and change have a lot in common. If you're not doing either, you're not alive. You're not. Sherri, I remember the time I did a leadership session, and the session was on change, leaders leading through change. And I started my session, 40 people were in the room. I started my session in the back of the room. And I welcomed and I started talking and training, and no one turned around. So okay, I'm gonna keep doing this. And I did it for another 5 minutes. And then I got a little bit of this, a little turn to the side, but they would not bring their entire body. And I went in to them saying, how are you going to lead through change when you wouldn't even change your body to turn around? We're so stuck in the way it always is. What is working or not working, and we stay there. And to the conversation that was occurring, I believe it's a phenomenal conversation, and I believe it's an ongoing challenge or problem. And we still have quite a few people who are saying, I want things to go back to the way they were.
Yeah, there's comfort.
That's over.
There's comfort in what's known.
So what advice would you have for people who might have that mindset? Some of the richness you pour into them during your coaching or your sessions, what would you say? Or what would you do?
Yeah, know what you want. It's a simple thing to say, but, a lot of times we'll go, oh, this is what I want. And yet we're not 100% behind that. So it's getting real clarity, like sit with yourself, whatever it takes for you to calm and ground yourself. I have videos where I teach people how to ground themselves and ground their energy. And whatever it takes for you to get calm and centered, balanced between your head and your heart, your pelvis, grounded and connected. And then ask yourself, what do I want?
That's good.
The clarity of what we want. It's like, I don't know, there's some old Cherokee proverb about, whatever wolf you feed, is the one that's going to go.
Yes.
I think most people have seen that. So the bad wolf or the good wolf. So you want to focus your intent on what you want in your life, and it'll get created, because what happens when we get 100% behind our intent is all kinds of mechanisms within us just start creating that in our lives.
Sure.
But it's getting that clarity and getting that confidence that that's what I want and that's what I need. And it takes self-searching, heart-searching, and peacefulness to be able to really connect with that and create that power.
In keeping with that, I would add, be clear on what you want and get clear on who you are.
Yeah.
The getting clarity on who you are will help with the authenticity and help with what you stand for and why you stand for it. And it's not consistently changing that core, that DNA. Yes, you can alter how you show up given the situation, but at the core, understanding and believing in who you are and why.
Jim, you and I are so aligned on everything. We knew this when we started talking. We knew that we really lined up very powerfully with each other in terms of our work and our research. And I'm excited to see how we both move forward and where we go. I wish, we've got a lot to share with the world. And
the cool part about it is We don't know where we're going, but we're still going.
That's right.
Oftentimes people don't move unless they have instructions, which takes me back to Simon Sinek's story where he talks about the March on Washington, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave that amazing speech. And for the people who were there, they did not receive a marketing plan or a business plan or how to do it. He shared his beliefs, his dreams, his energy, his why, in what was one of the best speeches of all time. And it did not have a strategic plan.
No.
There was so much uncertainty and ambiguity, but the bottom line was we need to come together as a people.
Mm-hmm.
One race, the human race.
Yep.
Come together.
We really do. And there's so much power in us that is untapped. There's so much, and people think that the heart is weak, but it's such a powerful thing. And it brings such peace into the world. And, each one of us, it's up to us to bring ourselves, our hearts, our being, our authenticity into every moment. And I love the research that you've done, and I love our connection.
Thank you. Me too. Me too. Donnie, any concluding words or comments or questions or statements in the chat room?
There aren't any more questions right now, just that people are resonating with our conversation today. And there was one question, but I don't think you'll have enough time to address it. From Charmaine, and I'm scrolling back to see if I can grab it real quickly, and of course I can't. Dr. Sherri, talk about how equity fits into the relationships, and can you quickly name the 7 implicit elements? Can you do that in the little bit of time we have left? Just get on that dissertation, come on.
Oh gosh, so it's this is a test, right? So it's trust, fairness, empathy, status, reciprocity, self-control, and the 7th one.
Yay! I don't know what.
Here's an opportunity for Dr. Sherri and for Charmaine to connect. It's an opportunity for you guys to connect virtually, follow up, and who knows what can happen as a result.
Sorry.
Sherri, I just wanted to really thank you for bringing your wisdom, your magic, your gift, your experiences to our session today. I totally agree that there's a lot of synergy there between our research. I look forward to the future, what it holds, and get ready to create something new, create something powerful that will be a common thought and hopefully a common practice that we can incorporate each and every day, where we can make the appropriate choices. With that said, Rachel, bring us home.
You're really more of the bring it home guy, Dr. Jim. But thank you again for another lovely session. And I believe we have some really cool things coming up for the next show, right? As we were discussing earlier, but it's a secret, everyone. Sorry.
You're teasing it. I love it. I love it. You teased it. I love it.
Yeah. Woo. But yes, thank you very, very much. And thank you, Dawn, as always, as well. And thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank
All right.
you.
We will see you next week. Continue to make those awesome, awesome choices. And do we have a little bit of music to play on the way out? If we don't, I'll clap my hands. If we do, great.
I didn't want it to play too quick.
Doing a great job today. Thank you so much.